Tune in weekly and listen to the Collateral Damage Podcast, where Michael Wilson and Maureen Cavanaugh host a variety of special guests to discuss topics and available services that will help you learn about the impact that substance use has on our lives, our families, and on our communities nationwide. Episodes and listening information can be found at www.cdpodcast.com. You can also search for Collateral Damage Podcast on your favorite listening platforms or watch previous and future episodes on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and share. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Collateral Damage Podcast. Here with Mike Wilson and Maureen Cavanaugh and our special guest John Checchi, who is my co-owner of Baystate Recovery Services, business partner and friend, and he is going to be sharing with us some of his own personal recovery stories, as well as what he does at Baystate Recovery Services, and probably one of the most important pieces of our company. But thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, tell me a little bit about how you got well. Well, better yet, tell our listeners.
You've heard the story once or twice.
I know the story.
Well, Mike knows the story because, Mike's a part of it. Mike was there from the beginning. I had no plans to get well until the day that I met Mike. So it definitely started there. For one thing, I believe in intervention because I'm a product of it. I think that, I'm kind of a case where, and I think, it happens a lot in our field where I kind of got well by accident. And, I hear a lot of people say these discouraging things like, my kid's not ready, so they don't even try, and that's the majority out there. I think, unless I can see that there's something better, then I'm not going to go after it. And it takes, somebody to sit in front of me and, tell me that there's a solution and show me this gift for me to be willing to actually go after it. So Mike was a big part of that, and Mike, is just very influential in letting me know that there was something better out there, which nobody had actually ever really done. And and then I would say, today, I got introduced to the 12 steps, which completely changed my life. I got into this to be sober, and I got so much more than that. I'm so grateful that I became a drug addict, because if I didn't become a drug addict, I wouldn't be introduced to these steps, and I wouldn't really have the life that I have today. So, it's
an interesting point.
Yeah, real grateful.
I find that same gratitude. I meet a lot of people that I know that aren't really kind of squared away. They're still struggling, and because I was able to go through this, I think I like John said, I benefited from a process that some people may never get to benefit from because they didn't get to go through my struggle too.
Yep. Yeah.
I remember seeing you that day. I remember your plan.
Yeah.
It was a really bad plan. I think it was I'll go to detox for and treatment for maybe a few days, and then I'll come out and talk to you and do the right thing. And I was like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That should not be your plan.
Yeah.
That would have been the first time that worked, huh?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what did you do? You went to detox, and then you went to
I went to a 30-day 12-step retreat, and then followed by sober living, and I was in sober living for 11 months. But the original agreement was that I was going to go to detox, and then I was going to go to a 30-day program, but only for 14 days.
That's right.
And
you had it all worked out. Huh?
Yeah, I knew it was best at the time, and then somehow 2 weeks turned into a year of inpatient.
Didn't you called on day 2, and you're like, I'm gonna hotwire this tractor and drive home. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I would say I didn't realize how crazy I was until I started to get a little well.
Yeah?
Nobody does.
Yeah, I didn't know that I had problems until they started getting fixed. I thought everything was working. I thought I knew. I thought I had it. And then it was just give me a little time and give me a little healing. And I'm like, I need some help. So
I think that's so important. I think that first year, to go through everything that a person goes through in an entire year.
Yeah.
The good things, bad things, everything. And just have that experience in a sober, supportive environment is for me, I think, the key to people getting well.
I think it's crucial.
Absolutely.
And I think, the biggest hurdle that I always have with newcomers coming in who, I see myself every time.
And this is to
I'm not the only one. Right. Yeah. I mean, they all come in with their plan and what they're going to do. And, I got to be somewhat compassionate because I understand that, I was in that same position.
Well, they all have their own timeline too. You know what I mean? Like they come in and like, no, I'm going to be home in like 2 months, or I'm going to be, as soon as I get my job, it's this, it's that, it's the girl, it's the kid, it's the dog, the job, and not recovery. Yeah. No, the recovery is not the priority. Right. It takes so long for that to become a priority.
Yeah.
I see that all the time. That people come to me and they need help getting into detox, whatever, or treatment, and then they have a plan for what they're going to do after. And those people always inevitably, God willing, come back and have to do it all over again because it just doesn't work like that. This is nothing that can be fixed in 14 days.
Yeah. Right. I like to say that like the first year is like the foundation, right? And so like you can build a beautiful home, and you can put all this work into your recovery, but if you don't have a solid foundation, it doesn't matter how beautiful that house is, like it's going to fall down eventually,
right?
Whether it's 2 years or 10 years. So like that first year is so crucial because people like, I can do it. And I say, sure, maybe for a while, but how long can a house sit on a cracked foundation before it just completely falls apart? And that first year I think is really crucial.
And sometimes it's longer than that because it depends on how cracked it is.
Right? Yeah, we know some. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you brought up a good point. Like in the beginning when people are coming through and they've got like these strange plans, it's like they don't know how sick they are until they get well and can reflect back, right? And we see this all the time on both sides of it. It's during in the front end when we're trying to intervene. And then even when they get to sober living, they're still sick and confused, and they don't realize how sick and confused they were. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of families make and people make is that they throw around these statements like they have to be ready. And, I hear that, and I understand that. In the end, like when you get to treatment or sober living, you have to be open. Your cup can't be so full that you can't accept anything in. So at a certain point, you do have to be ready. But this statement that gets thrown around, like they have to be ready first before they go in, to me, almost sounds like they have to be clear-headed enough to make the decision to go to treatment while still being so sick, which is impossible.
Right.
I mean, it's so hard to have a clear thought or make a good plan that's going to challenge you. Like, when you came into my office and sat down and told me your plan, and I was like, that's hilarious. You know what I mean? But in your mind, that was like the best you could come up with. That was the most you were willing to challenge yourself. That was the most you could consider giving up to work on this. And that's common.
Right.
Everybody does.
Well, if you're gonna convince me to go away and get locked up, you got to prove to me that I can't manage my life.
Right.
But the problem is that I was kind of like the manager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't necessarily managing my life, but I had other people doing it for me.
You had a team.
Yeah. And, like, I needed someone like you to step in and tell my family that I needed to be fired.
Right.
Somebody like me shouldn't be the one managing this household. I need to go.
Terrible at this job.
I need to go. I mean, that's what you do. You fire. If there's not a good manager, you got to be fired. So, I left because I was out of options. I thought that I was standing on my own 2 feet that whole time. I mean, I think it's a part of it. I was extremely delusional. Yeah. Like I thought that I was doing it. I'm living life, and I really wasn't. And it really took my family to have the courage to let me go, and unfortunately, see me fall. Before they could actually believe that.
Such a scary thing, and so hard for a lot of families, but
necessary.
Absolutely necessary. I see all the time too. People, they go through detox and they're in the program, and then they're like, I'm so much better now. I see it all. Now they want to go home and live life like nothing ever happened, and their families want them back too, because they want to make believe that nothing ever happened either. But guess what? Something really big happened, and it doesn't work like that.
And it's still like in that protective zone too. Like I can fix this, But I mean, I don't know. It's just really important that like I had to kind of somewhat spread my wings. Like sobriety shouldn't be the bar. I think independence should be. Because that was really the problem anyways. I mean,
sobriety's like zero. Like you're at negative 100, and when you come out of treatment sober, you're now at zero.
Right.
Like that's your foundation. Right. Now you get to start. It's like sobriety isn't the goal. It's like the beginning.
Right.
Now you have to learn how to like pay bills,
Right.
manage an apartment, be a father
Right.
or a mother,
Right.
Yeah.
be a child, be a friend, be a human being.
Right. Right.
But see, this
While
is what I
sober.
like about about Barry's house, because a lot of sober houses, even the good sober houses, a lot of them don't teach them anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're assuming okay, so say through detox, through treatment, into a sober house, and now we want you to go out and get a job and take care of yourself and do those
Right.
things that you should be doing.
Right.
Well, but nobody's been doing those things for a very long time, if ever.
Yeah.
So somebody has to
It's a
show
thing.
them,
Yeah.
and I know that you do that.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Independence is important. I mean, I would say, like, you know, we say that we have dependency problems. You know what I mean? We're substance abuse dependency, but I was dependent on people as well. You know, like, I mean, you know, I was incapable of doing things, and, you know, my family, my friends, like, they did a lot of things for me, and I never really grew up, you know, so it's part of it. And I see myself in a lot of these guys that come through. It's the same thing. It's just, you know, I didn't really have, like, I didn't really have respect for a dollar, because it was always kind of thrown at me. You know, I really didn't have, like, respect for, like, housing, because, you know, I didn't pay any bills, you know, so it's like, you know, or like laundry, you know, like I never even did laundry before. Like, these are like silly things that, you know, believe it or not, like, it all to me ties into the same problem. We have a living problem, you know.
Yeah.
It's an impossible task to just develop skills out of nowhere, you know. And that was, I know my family said it, and I know a lot of families think it. It's like, okay, stop doing drugs and just go be normal. Like, go do normal things, go pay your bills, like, be responsible. And if that doesn't exist and nobody's shown you, or you haven't learned how to do it sober without the crutch of substances or people, places, and things, it is impossible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you're at an age, most people are at an age now where people expect you to know how to do these things.
Yeah, they do expect you.
So
It also feels pretty shitty as the person trying and
Right.
failing, and trying and failing, and
Right.
having everybody be let down. And it's almost like you don't want to do it again.
Yeah, independence is
Yeah.
healthy. You know, you have a lot more respect for your life.
So I have a lot of families that say to me, "Well, I can't throw them out of the house." You're not throwing them out of the house. There's a girl
Right.
that I'm working with right now. She's 32 years old.
Right.
It's like, what 32-year-old lives at
Right.
home?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not a normal situation.
Right.
Where you're living off of your parents at 32 years old.
Right.
And so this is a good thing, you know,
Yeah.
and learning how to live on your own slowly and supported,
Right.
I think is I personally, well, you know, I feel like this because that's what Magnolia does. This is what we do, is we raise money for sober living, because I think that that's the most important thing.
It is.
I mean, you can have a really good treatment center, and you can have good things come out of that, but where the rubber meets the road is in the year afterwards.
Yeah, which is cool, because I get to see all the change.
And
you
it can
know?
be amazing, right?
It is great.
Even for
It's
the people
great.
that come in thinking they got this all together. I'm
Yeah.
going to be here for, I'm going to stay for a month just to
Yep.
shut everybody up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really cool. I get to see everybody grow up and start talking different by the time they leave. And
I'm a little jealous. I get to see them on
yeah,
like
you're
the
on
darkest day.
Yeah, front
They
lines.
hate me.
Yeah, they really do.
Then they get to you, and their lives get better. They change, and I'm over here just, you know.
Yeah,
Such a good guy.
I just get to be the asshole I met first.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I get it easy.
So I mean, I'm always, as a matter of fact, somebody from the Chronicle today called me about sober living in Falmouth, and they're doing a story. I guess it's going to come up pretty soon on sober living in on the Cape, and they wanted the name of 2 good women's houses because they couldn't find a women's house. There's men's houses down there, but then a good women's house. So I know what my criteria is, but what do you think makes a good sober house?
Structure.
Yeah.
You know, I really think structure is important. Community, an actual owner that's on site. You know, I think not being too big is a huge thing too. I mean, some of these houses, like, they've got like 40 beds, and it's like,
They're rooming houses.
I think that if you work at a house and you can't name every one of your guests, then you are too big.
Absolutely. Not just name every
I know
guest, but like
everything.
talk about their life.
I know everything.
Yes.
Right.
Like, you have to know what they're doing, know where they're headed, and if it's working, and is it helping. Like, that's
Yeah.
And we're just present, and we're there, and like, we don't, I would say that, like, we don't give them enough leash to hang themselves, you know, just because there's such a presence there. I mean, we have 10 beds and we have 4 staff. I actually don't even really, I mean, there probably is another house, but I don't know of another house that has that type of structure.
Yeah.
I really don't.
No, I think that's so important because I know that people worry about how often they're tested, how often you're drug tested.
Right.
But if you have a house like yours, people know they're going to, you know when someone's going to relapse before they ever relapse.
Yeah. Yeah. And they just, I would say that I think a lot of them, I don't really know what the science of it is, but like, I think maybe they just don't even try because they know they're not even going to they're going to get caught. You know, we make it a point every day, like literally we make it a point every day between me and the other managers that are there to have some sort of FaceTime with each individual each day.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Make it a
you
point.
know they're going
Right.
down the wrong road
Right.
before they ever take that step most of the time because you can tell there's a personality change because you know their personality.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Anger, upset, frustration. I mean, those are kind of signs to me where, like, I don't know, they're just going to be dying for some sort of relief in the future. And so just learning how to live life on life's terms and just understanding that you are exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in time, you know, I don't know, helps bring some relief to the situation.
And a family can't do that. Your mother can't do that.
No.
Your
Home
father
can't supplement
do
that environment.
Absolutely not. It just doesn't work
Yeah.
because when it's your mother, you're like, stop asking me those questions.
Quiet.
Not that I've ever heard that myself.
or done it. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's even people that I've gotten too close to. I was just talking to somebody this morning. I was talking to their counselor, and I've been like, I know this kid for the last 2.5 years. I'm like, I can't be that person anymore because I've turned into mom.
Yeah.
So he's afraid to tell me things now because I've turned into
Right.
mom. And you know what? He needed mom, but now there needs to be somebody else that is doing those things because I'm not effective anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So it's back now. I feel like it's like when
Right.
I have another child.
Get clouded by emotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make a point. You just brought up the different pieces of quality sober living. And, you know, I've never actually been in quality sober living as a person in recovery. I've only been in the other type of sober living. And I won't say where I've been, but I will say that the houses that I've been at, you know, they provided a base level of support, which I think is what a lot of people think of when they think of sober living. You know, that base level of support is that, you know, there's maybe an in-house meeting once a week.
Right.
You know, there's an expectation that you'll do 3 to 5 meetings outside of the house. Which recovery path you choose is totally up to you. You're drug tested 3 days a week. It's standard. You may never even meet the person who owns the building. You'll talk to the house manager occasionally if there's a problem. You do your chore and you get a key.
Yep.
And that was what I got. And what that did was it definitely gave me a safer than home place to be.
Yeah.
But there was no culture there. There was no recovery community. Like maybe I made friends with like some old guy that sat in the hallway smoking cigarettes all day. But we didn't talk about recovery. We just talked about everything else. Like there was no recovery in the house. There was no culture in the house. It was just a place to live. And then everyone went outside of the house to get their recovery.
Yeah.
And sometimes they brought it back, sometimes they didn't. And that to me was the disconnect. Like I was there, and I was there for, 4 to 6 months. Each time I went, it was court ordered. I had to be there.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, if there was more of a recovery culture, I might have felt compelled to participate or embrace it. But it just didn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And so all I did was sit there, and I just was basically living out of that place.
Right.
Off doing my own thing. I was, it's hard to get well there.
It is harder.
And I still think even a place like that is better than home.
Well, that's what I said. It was safer than
Exactly.
home.
That's what I was going to say,
But it's
too.
not. It doesn't have that recovery
No, you're
culture that
right.
John and I are talking about. That like
Right.
when most people think sober living, they probably think just that base level that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
And a quality version of that is everything I just said it is.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that still doesn't breed recovery. It's not a
Right.
culture, a recovery culture home.
Right.
And I think that's where we're talking about that next step up. That other quality level of care where people can get well there
Right.
Yeah.
requires more attention.
It's few and
A
far
staff to
between.
client ratio that's
Right.
like aggressive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's ideal, definitely. And I think it's just too bad there's not more places like that.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that there's not more affordable places like that.
That's what I
because,
was gonna say, too.
I mean, even in a house where it is like like you said, that base level, it's really not that hard to do a few extra things. It's possible.
Right.
And it's just not being done.
Right.
So there are houses that try, but
I think currently, over the last couple of years, there's also some expectations to limit what houses can say people need to do for their recovery. That certain sober livings can't push a particular type of recovery. They've got to be open to everything. So it's really hard to pinpoint a recovery style unless you step out of that. The other thing is it's a little bit more expensive to have staff.
Yeah, exactly.
It costs a little bit more money to have groups throughout the day, people present all day doing things and that, that changes things.
Yeah.
And it also pushes up against some of the expectations that, for freedom that people might have. Like if they're coming out of treatment, like, oh, I'm going to go to sober living. I should be able to have my car immediately, get my phone immediately, start sleeping out. I'll get to do this. I'll get to do that. Like it's an apartment.
Right.
When we set up a house, like John said, structure, like there's an initial structure to the house where, there's an initial restriction. You can't just come and then go out. Like you're on full restriction for at least 30 days. And during that period in time, a lot of people that hear that might be like, oh, that's not what I'm looking for. And the family's like, oh, no, he needs to get back to work. She needs to get back to work too fast. Like we can't worry about that restriction right now. And we're like, all right, well, we're not going to bend.
Right.
Because this is about getting them well and what it's going to take, not just can we accommodate their desire to not be in treatment or jail or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing is that, like, dismissing those that aren't willing to actually work the program. Some houses, they'll just let you stay even if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And it just makes for, I think, a sick environment in the house. And nobody's really active. I think that it affects other people in the house if you got one bad egg in the house. So it's important that everybody that's there is striving towards the same goal and doing the same thing. And I think it's really important that people are saying the same thing. And so I think that sometimes what ends up being tough is that if you're a sober house and you're asking your guests to go to outside meetings in coordinates to staying in your home, you don't know what messages they're hearing. I mean, there's over 300 meetings a day in Massachusetts alone. Wow. Every day. And how many of those do you think are actually doing the right thing and saying the right thing?
Or if they're even going. I don't know about I used to have to get
chairman signatures.
Listen, I used to
Johnny the chairman? Right, I know him.
Right? My parole officer gave me a card. Yeah. Right? He gave me this little card and he's like, all right, I want you to fill this out and bring it in. And I didn't go to meetings at the time. And even if I did, I always forgot to get it signed. So in the end, I'd get like 4 or 5 different colored pens. Yeah. And I'd just start signing names with my right hand, my left hand. Hey, could you sign a name? And just make it up and hand it in. I mean, how do you even know?
Right. I don't have a list of all 300 chairman.
I mean, don't do this, kids. But the bottom line is if that's where you're getting your recovery, and like you're not getting it at the house, I mean, why are you there? And I guess that's where a lot of people start thinking that, like, why am I here? What am I doing here? Yeah. And that culture, that community is just, in my opinion, the biggest part. Like you said you stayed 11 months when you were getting well, and I know it was the community that kept you there.
Yeah.
Like just being a part of that group and like growing up and seeing other men be men and like launch into their own life was huge.
We keep alumni close, and I think that really helps because
you keep alumni really close. We keep alumni. They move down the street when they
buy them pizza.
We lure them back
it's all pizza. About the pizza. Buying pizza. At the first of every month we do pizza night, and so the alumni come back and we buy them pizza. And then we also, every Tuesday night, we have a guest that went through Barry's house, just talk about their experience in Barry's house and how they're living on the outside and they're doing well. But we keep them close too, because we try and actually organize exits together, so that like they actually leave together and they keep doing this together, because I mean, home is just not the better option. I call that the scene of the crime. So why return?
It's so hard for parents to hear that,
Yeah.
Because I know I wanted nothing more than for my daughter to come home.
I know, right?
I really do. I wanted her to come home, and I wanted her to be 7 again, and I wanted to like forget that this all happened.
Right.
Except when I was going to grill her with 100 questions, and I remember I said you have to have 6 months of sobriety before you come home.
Yeah, there should be some sort of gap.
Yeah, and I mean, when she had 6 months of sobriety, the last thing she wanted to do was come home.
Right, that's when she can come home.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that, it's not about the family. It doesn't make it their fault. And that's what I think people have to get over. It's not, you're not throwing them out. It's not your fault if they don't come home.
Right.
This is the next step in their recovery. And the goal for everybody is for us to raise healthy children that go and live their own lives.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of that happening.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I always tell people think very carefully about this, because the first 30 days everybody's out of their mind anyhow. So if you go beyond that 30 days and the place you go after that is so important.
It's so important. I mean, to think that a problem this big is going to be fixed in just a month, and not just a month, but you're talking like enclosure. You're an inpatient. You're not going anywhere. You're not learning skills.
Right.
The thing that I get is that people are they go off to work during the day, and then I get to see them at night when they bring home their problems. And that's where we do the most work.
Right.
Like, I want them to go out. I want them to have a job, and I want them to have issues. I want them to bring home frustrations, because if they don't, then we have nothing to work with.
If you don't struggle, you don't grow.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's really crucial that we're there.
Well, and that's what
when
the
they come
family
home.
wants to bring them back into the safety of the home, nerf everything, and make sure that there's no sharp objects that they might get cut on.
Right.
And I'm again the exact opposite. It's like, well, they're not going to get better that way.
No.
You know what I mean? And the idea of the bubble of treatment. I mean, again, I can't count how many families when we get to that, they're like, all right, so can we add another 6 months of treatment? And I'm
Right.
like, ugh. Maybe how about some sober living?
Right.
Let's give them a chance to actually grow in a real world environment around real problems with people who can help them solve them.
Yeah.
It's the difference between being sober and being recovered. I mean,
Absolutely.
if like you break your leg, like you still need to resting is the first part, right?
Yeah.
Which is what inpatient is for addiction. It's resting. We're taking a rest from life, we're taking a break, we're getting 3 square meals a day, but then we have to exercise it. Then there's this last part where it's rehabilitation. Like, you have to work on your leg and get that muscle back and like strengthen it up. And I think addiction is the same way, where we're kind of like the rehabilitation part.
And if you don't come out and flex those muscles, they're not going to develop.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much fear, from the individual trying to get well, fear of the life they have to give up, and fear of the life that now they're being told they have to live is a life of like accountability, responsibility, all that stuff that's terrifying anyway. And then the family of, hey, we've been managing this unmanageable thing for so long. Like, I've met parents who've like given up their job, and quit their job to take care of this child, or divorced over it, or whatever the situation is, and then their loved one goes off to treatment, and it's almost like they don't have anything to do anymore. And I know that sounds crazy, because you're like,
empty nest
if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're in the midst of it, I'm sure you're like, oh my God, I wish for that. But then it happens.
Yeah.
And now they're on their own journey getting well without you, and you've learned that there's really nothing you can do except allow them to have that journey. It's a little empty. You want to be a part of it. And so, another part of sober living that I think we really try to incorporate into Barry's house is communicating with the family. So John and I have a little stopgap. John is working at the house with the folks at the house, and my job is to stay in contact with the families each week. And I think, giving them that update, or allowing them to call and talk to somebody that's not John, that's not like directly interacting with the person, is good, because they just get to talk about how they feel. They're not trying to influence the outcome at the sober house. Their loved one is not manipulating the parents, like trying to use John to do that. So that little stopgap is nice.
Yeah.
But, I know that as a family member, like, just having somebody sit in a program and not getting those updates, it's hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. But, and then just listening to your loved one. So getting the phone call, this place sucks.
Yeah.
Everybody's stealing my stuff, and John is mean, and he doesn't like me, so he's, all this stuff. I mean, and you're listening to this as a parent, you're thinking, I'm paying for this.
It's terrible.
I'm paying for this person to abuse my. And then, but if you were a fly in the wall, you see that that's not happening at all. And now, what that really means is, I want to get out. I want to live in your house. I'd like to steal some of your jewelry, what's left, and I'd like to go back out and use again.
I need a little bit of your money, and I just need to stay downstairs.
Yeah.
And after that, then we can talk about a different sober house.
Well, and that's what we're up against. I mean, there was there was a figure that got thrown around a few months ago, and I think we talked about it on one of the podcasts, but it was that 80-20, that there's most of the treatments that's out there is geared toward 20% of the population, not the other 80, right? So only, less than 20% of the people in treatment want to be there and are trying to get well. The other 80% are there because they need to be there, either through legal consequences, family leverage them in via intervention, they've got other plans, they think they should be doing something else. There's a larger population of people in treatment right now who don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And the programs they generally cater to that 20% of like, they just assume that you want to be there. Everything is like, well, what do you want to do?
Right.
And they're expecting that this person's going to tell the truth, and that like they're gonna make plans on what's in their best interest. And so they're constantly letting them almost lead the charge through treatment.
So they're catering to the easiest part of what they do.
Well, they're assuming that the individual is self-motivated and driven, and so they're taking their feelings and thoughts into consideration. Not that they shouldn't, but for us, people who are in recovery ourselves, when we sit down with people, we know that the majority of them, are still actively manipulating, even if it's not coming from a malicious or intentional place.
Absolutely.
Their sickness is still active.
Yeah.
They are still, they've been behaving like an addict longer than they've been behaving like a person in recovery. So there's still some of that in there. And so we have to be really sensitive to that and look at every word that comes out of their mouths like that might not be true.
Right.
Whereas the parents are more likely to hear that
It's
one
so
phone call about there's
my
a bunch
God.
of drug addicts in here and there's some dirt in the corner. And you're like, well, I'm coming to pick you up right now. We'll get you to some place that doesn't have dirt in the corner and they'll be nicer to you. And it's like, you don't automatically go to a place where that person's probably lying to try to manipulate. And most parents wouldn't.
Yeah.
Most parents want to believe that their kid is like trying. And this place is making it hard for them.
Plus, the parents feel like if you don't believe them, and if you don't go along with this, then what you're doing is going to make them relapse.
Right.
And it's going to be your fault.
Right.
That's exactly right.
It's going to be your fault.
Yeah, because everything parents feel like, at some level, there's two kinds of parents.
Right,
One
right.
is nothing is my fault,
Yeah.
but the great majority is everything is my fault.
Yeah. Sorry
Every
for breathing.
single thing. Yeah, and so you're just waiting and you don't want it to be their fault because they're perfect. You know what I mean, in your head. So you would rather take the responsibility. I'd rather it be me, and then because I can change me.
Parent stuff,
I
right?
can
Yeah.
change me. I can't change you. So if I just fix all the
Yeah.
things about me that caused you to be sick, then you'll be fine. It's just it's really parents and family members get just as sick as the
Yeah.
person that is
Yeah.
that is struggling. They really do.
It's almost sicker. It's in a different way. It's
Oh, my
very. I've actually had, I've had some moms step back in and almost sabotage the situation.
Yeah.
Oof.
Their loved ones in treatment, and rather than promoting the professional recommendations of the treatment plan and actually keeping this thing going, invest months into a treatment plan and then just decide no, we're done. We're just gonna do something else now. And I have to step in and have that really tough conversation. Are you sure? You're months into something that could completely change your loved one's life. Why are we stopping now?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they just step in. Well, no, because we have a better plan. And that's hard. I couldn't imagine, being a doctor and having somebody in treatment for something, and then one of the family members comes in no, we've just decided we're just going to stop now. We think we got enough. And I'd be like, I don't know if you've ever taken penicillin for something, and they give you the bottle and take the whole thing, and you take half and you feel better. You're like, eh.
Yeah.
I'm good. And then you catch it again 2 weeks later, and
yeah.
they're like, did you take the whole thing? You're like, well, no. I mean, I thought I was
felt
fine.
better.
Yeah, it felt better.
Right.
And that's what happens to most people here is they get, that first 30 days of treatment that you were talking about, Maureen, that's the physical recovery,
You're
right?
right.
That's where they're in the bubble. They're eating again. They're sleeping again. They're connecting with people. They're talking. They go to a visit, and all of a sudden there's color in their cheeks. Yeah, no withdrawals. There's a little sparkle in their eye.
Yeah.
They're talking normal again. That's 30 days. That's physical recovery, right? And then you got so many different versions of recovery, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, all these different levels to hit. But a lot of times when the individual just feels good enough and the family's I think we're there.
And they want them back so badly.
They want to get them back to normal
Yeah.
life. They want to speed them up and get them to a job or get them to school or get them back in an apartment or bring them back home. And all of a sudden the family steps in, and this is where I say maybe they're sicker, is they step in and then they start to remanage the thing they were trying to manage before
Right.
and take over. And then John and I get stuck being well, this might be a bad idea.
And they're I mean, I know this because then you get afraid that your your child is not going to believe that you support them and believe that they're really, they've got it this time and that they're really doing the work and all this. So you don't want to go against your child either.
Right.
But that's the wrong thing to do because this is not a disease that defies reason, right?
Yeah. Well, if you understand that this is a thinking problem.
Yeah.
Right. Addiction's it's a thinking. It changes the way that your brain works. Then hopefully once you learn that, once you understand that, maybe as a parent or family member, if you're reading books, doing research, going to groups or meetings, and hearing about the depth of this illness and that it's not just the surface drug or alcohol use that needs to go away. It's not time away from a substance that heals people, right? The time away from a substance, like we said before, just gets you to zero. Now you need to build something. Right. That's like an empty lot with a foundation. Like, we have a house. I'm like, no, you have a hole with a foundation. You don't have a house. Like, you could sleep in there and put cardboard over it, but that's not the thing, right? Getting sober is not the goal, to your point. And so if you're going to treatment and you're coming out of treatment and sober was your goal and you're coming home, odds are you're going to repeat your mistakes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have a series.
Life.
Yeah, you're going to have a series of 30, 60, or 90-day chunks of almost getting it and then falling apart again because there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That's hard to watch and that's frustrating. It actually turns people away from going back into treatment because they're not doing treatment correctly.
Right.
They're just going in for that first dose and they don't stay and they don't get the result and then we've tried treatment.
Yeah.
We've tried that so many times it doesn't work.
I think too, that feeling that you've completed something. If you say, I'm going to be in there for a year and I'm going to work on all these things and I'm going to get a job, I'm going to do all these things, and you set goals, which I know you set goals with them. Yeah. And at the end of the time that, or even after a certain number of months, you see the progress you've made and you see the progress you're making towards the rest of your goals. That's kind of what we do when we're raising children, and everything is simple.
Yeah. Like the normal launch.
Right. So I've seen that in my own family where I have one child that did everything exactly you would hope that somebody did it.
Right.
And I have another child that struggled, right? So she had lots of ups and downs and all that kind of, but once she saw the progress that she made in a year, then it made her want to do this, go through the second year and make more plans and more goals. And I just think that, that's something that happens.
I think so too.
And it doesn't happen without support.
No, I think that the more work you put into your recovery, the less likely you're going to be to throw it out the window.
Shouldn't we? It would be wonderful if we could all do this.
Right. I put so much work into my recovery. The last thing I ever want to do is just throw it away.
Well, that's what she goes, I have things to lose now. I don't want to lose the things that I, even when she has really bad, hard times. And I bring her up, but I hear this over and over again, and because this is kind of how it works.
Yeah.
And again, I was no part of that. I was mom. I loved her.
You gave her access.
Well, you know what it is? I started to get well by the time she wanted to get well. It was, what a coincidence, huh? When I started to get well, then she also got well.
I believe that.
That's not, there was no coincidence there. It was because I stopped being a raving maniac and realized my place in it. And then she started to take her recovery into her own hands. Yeah. But and then I realized that I'm not her recovery coach. Yeah. I am not a professional that can work with her ever. And I may be able to work with other people's kids, but I definitely can't work with my own. And I stood back and I let other people do what they did. Yeah. And then I acted like mom.
Yeah. The equation doesn't make sense on paper. It's, in order to hold on, you got to let go.
So counterintuitive.
That's right.
I think about it myself, with what I do for a living. If I go down this road and a family member or a child of mine is going through this, it's going to be really hard for me to take someone else's advice. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I was just thinking about it while you were talking. I could just picture me yelling at professionals and flipping tables. Don't tell me what to do. Yeah. I could see me getting like that because, it's really hard to let go. These are our kids, mm-hmm. These are the people that we've raised. We know them supposedly better than anybody else does, what are you going to say that I couldn't say? How come the parent can't get through? It's going to take this stranger to do it. There's all these things that, rattle around in your head, and then you sit down with this person that tells you that the solution to your problem is to do the opposite of what you've been doing, which is loving and parenting. And not to stop doing it, but to try to love in a different, healthier way.
Right.
You know, to be closer to them by setting boundaries instead of just not having any.
Right.
And I, that's a hard thing for parents to realize because what you're not cutting them off, you're not throwing them out, you're giving them options.
Yes.
Right.
Healthy options.
Right.
And if they refuse to take them, then that's their choice. You're not throwing them out. But it's very, very hard because all you want to do, you don't want your child living in the street.
Right.
It's like as if things aren't scary enough. But, chances are if they've gotten to that point, they're more resourceful than you can ever imagine.
Yeah. Right.
So, bad things do happen. And it's terrible and it's so scary. But bad things happen in people's own bedrooms,
Well,
So,
I was just going to, I mean, people are
overdoses
so
at
afraid, families are so afraid of like letting them go and that they're going to overdose. I mean, majority of overdoses that I hear are actually at the family's house.
Right. They happen alone in their bedroom.
Yeah. I was more,
couch.
I mean, I used a hell of a lot more at my house because it was a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
Well,
shooting heroin as a homeless guy is not as fun as doing it in your warm room.
No, it's definitely not.
It's not.
It's a little more dangerous too. I mean, we're not, and that's the thing I guess that a lot of parents and others may feel is that because we're using that we are somehow suicidal. Taking constant risks because we want to die. I can only speak for myself here, but I didn't want to die. I was actually trying to be really careful with the doses that I was doing because I liked getting high and I wanted to live. I just didn't like the pain that life came with. Like I didn't want to die.
Unless I needed something from you.
What's that?
Unless I needed something from you.
Correct. Yeah, no, then I would tell you that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'd make you believe that that's
I'll
the case.
End it. Yeah.
I'll end it right now.
Yeah.
But
and that doesn't mean that you don't take it seriously. That's the sad thing is that like I can't sit here and be like, it's a bluff. If your kid is threatening to kill themselves, I can never say that ever. But what I will say is that I did it. Yeah.
I did too.
Just to get what I wanted.
Well, that's the desperation, right?
Yeah.
Like how far
I will do whatever I need to do to feel okay today.
Well, so much easier to section somebody on a 12 than it is on a 35.
Right. Yeah. Well, when they say they're going to hurt themselves, respond appropriately, go to the hospital, get the section 12, get the 72 hours, so you can figure something out.
You're right. You're right. And that should be the response.
I mean, that's always what it is.
Right.
You said the words.
$40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go do the thing.
You're okay. Heard you.
Yeah.
Could you say it one more time into the phone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. Like it is hard. It's hard as a professional to get families to like rally families to all be on the same page, to step in and do the hard thing that needs to be done. It's hard, even meeting a person post-treatment and having them in sober living to help them find the motivation if the family is still sick pushing against us.
Yeah.
So just as much as the community, like what's a quality sober house, like the community, what the residents are doing in there, the groups and stuff like that. To John's point, everything that happens in the house is why those guys get well. But there's still a pull. There's a gravitational pull from the family for some of them to just come back into the fold and come back to the sickness. And they're not doing it intentionally.
No.
They're doing it because they just want them back.
Right.
And again, a quality sober living, to your initial question, should have some contact with the family, something to help break that gravitational pull, because all it takes is a bad week or a Saturday afternoon where they're visiting at home and the kid's just like, I'm done. And they're like, all right, well, let's get you an apartment, and then it's over. Yeah. There's nobody to challenge it. There's nobody to resist it. There's nobody to stand up for the treatment process and how important it is to keep going.
Yeah.
And so, to have that piece is just as important, is to have somebody managing the family.
I agree with you. And you're not mental health professionals, so you're not bound by HIPAA.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, and neither, I don't know.
Everybody knows that right up front.
Right. And so I that's something that I don't think parents realize. They get so used to not being able to ask the questions when the person is in treatment. You can ask the questions when they're in, especially if you're paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You can ask those questions, and I think that anybody that I've had experiences with some really wonderful sober houses that that were there and told me what was going on, because I couldn't see, she wasn't in front of me.
Yeah, I think sometimes HIPAA can actually get in the way.
Oh, I think so too. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, because it's because it's understandable, because it's people don't want their medical business out there, but the funny thing is that a part of my problem was the delusion that I thought that I was hiding this from people. You know,
I feel like you should lose
that
it. Like
people were too afraid to talk to me about it. Like I was the type of guy where like my name got brought up most of the time behind closed doors.
Right.
Nobody wanted to challenge me because nobody wanted to deal with me. You know, and like nobody wants the blowouts or the arguments or anything like that. So everybody just talks behind your back. And then for a while, like when people do that long enough, I think I'm getting away with it. I think I'm doing this. You know, I'm gonna be able to. You know, I'm gonna be the only guy in the history of the world to live his life and be a heroin addict
without anyone taking it away
I'm
from
doing
me.
it. In my mom's basement.
Crushing it at 42.
Succeeding,
Oh my God.
Wow. I can't believe I'm still doing this at 42. I'm getting away with this.
Winning.
You know, and I know this is probably crazy, but like I almost feel like, you know, HIPAA's good in the beginning if you're that 20%. Like if you're that self-motivated individual who's still trying to hold your stuff together and like you put yourself in treatment, I think it should be good. Like nobody should be able to just find out or call and ask. But, you know, if you keep coming in, like I think maybe 2 or 3 times in for an overdose, can we call it?
But
you know, can we pull it?
If my child overdoses and she's still on my insurance, you're going to bill my insurance. I'm going to get something in the mail, and that's how I'm going to find out she overdosed.
That is pretty.
That's
crazy.
how most of the families I
mean,
talk
it's
to
ridiculous.
find out. They're like, we just got a bill
You're
and
gonna find out anyways. Wow.
It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But and how can you help and how can you do anything about it if you don't know and you don't know this is going on? Because I know lots of families that I found out that she, you know, when she overdosed, sometimes when we got the bill in the mail.
That's unreal.
And but look at Turnbridge, they've found a way around it. And we had Diana Clark on the show from Turnbridge, and Katie was there briefly.
Yep.
My daughter, before she jumped over the wall.
She could have just walked right out too.
She could have walked out. It was because you know what? They followed her when she walked out, and they would call me when she walked out. She thought she had like an hour's like running time in the if she jumped the wall. But anyway, they did call me, and they always called me, and they found a way around HIPAA.
Well, it's having the family advocates, having that stopgap too. You know, that's why John and I have that. I mean, even if we were a licensed facility, you know, having the stopgap between, you know, that individual works with John and I work with the family, and John and I as professionals get to share that information. You know, I mean, if it's relevant to my case, then I have to share it too.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, it is a hindrance to not be able to talk openly about something that feeds off of secrets. Right? I mean, that is the sickness of addiction, is secrets and lies and manipulation. And if you can't expose that to sunlight, if you can't bring transparency to that, then you can't fix it.
Right. And that just goes to the whole point that this is a family disease. Everyone's affected by it. Everyone needs to be in some form of treatment.
Yep.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I'm more likely to participate in recovery if I feel like the cat is out of the bag. You know, people know
the game is
it's
over.
Out there, right?
Like what was the one we used to say? You ever play hide and seek? And then have you ever just played hide?
No, right?
Like hide and seek is fun when everybody's chasing you and looking through you. You're like, oh my God, they're never gonna find me. If you've ever played hide, it's like the dumbest game ever.
Right.
Like there's nobody looking for you.
No, you're just
once
sitting
a game
alone
is over,
you're
just sitting alone in the dark and like this is actually kind of stupid.
Yep.
And you know it is stupid. And if nobody's chasing you around, if the game is no longer on, the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. Yeah, maybe that's not what makes you do it, but you are more likely. You are more likely to engage because the game is over.
Yep.
And you're more likely to accept help or choose a different path.
Right.
So,
Yep.
I love this topic. We could talk about this all day, right? We do talk about this all day. As a matter of fact, all three of us, one way or another. So let me ask you this: if there was one thing about the system that you could change, John, what would it be?
Oh boy,
just one.
That's a big
Can't not the top 10.
I
but
can
just
change.
one thing.
I have the power to change.
You have the power.
something
You can just
in
come
the
in
system.
and make one thing in the system work a little bit better. What would it be?
I think that I don't know if like I could actually do this, but if honestly, I think the biggest problem in the industry is that people are talking. They're talking about other people's treatment, how they're running their programs, and I think that people should just mind their business and run their own programs the way they do it.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people out there that are really trying to force their position on other people, saying that it is the only way.
Right.
And it's not. You know, like I'm going to tell you right now, like Barry's house, it's not for everybody.
Right.
It's not. you know. And if somebody tells you that like they are the solution and they are the answer, they're a liar.
Yeah.
They're an absolute liar. Right. And just worry about your doing. There are multiple paths. Be okay with that. There's multiple paths out there. Like I got well from the steps. Mm-hmm. You know, I tried MAT for years and I had to get away with it. You know, I had to get away from it. Sorry. And yeah, like, does that mean that I don't think that MAT is a good solution for people? No, I think it's an option. Mm-hmm. I mean, the best thing that I actually got out of MAT was that I actually gave it a chance, and I tried it, and I realized that it didn't work for me. Yeah. You know, and so and if I hadn't gone down that road, I wouldn't have been so willing to take the long, more rigorous road. I think of like, you know, the 12 steps. Mm-hmm. You know, so yeah, I think that there should be options out there. I think that people should stop saying that there's only one. Yeah. You know, that's the only other thing that I would change.
Both ways, though.
Right.
Yeah, that goes both ways. Yeah.
Definitely. I like the idea of the variety. Like, I mean,
the real crazy thing isn't that people are, you know, like some people like, you know, 12 steps and sober houses, like, you know, they're not solutions and this and that. And it really is. I mean, you know, I'm living proof. I'm sitting here. Mm-hmm. I find it funny too that like there's a lot of people in this industry that, you know, they're in recovery and they work in this field, and I'm always curious how they actually got well and what it is that they're actually promoting. Yeah, you know, what are you right? Are you actually practicing what you preach? Mm-hmm. You know, because that's what we do. I mean, we practice what we preach, and I don't know how you could do this job and not do that. You know, maybe that's the difference between actually loving your job and just having a job, because I like to be able to talk about what I did and how I did it and how I'm still doing it today, and it just makes it easier to work. I mean, I could never imagine selling something that didn't work on me, and now I'm pushing it on other people. Very contradicting.
People do that all the time.
It's really scary, and it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you go to buy a Honda and the guy drives a Ford.
Yeah, and then you hear, and then what's happening now is that like the government's like taking sides between like, you know, what's right and what's wrong, and it's like, no, there is no exact answer. I would say, listen, government, you're right. You know, let's go with this one way. Yeah. If it was 100%, you know, accurate, like there is no fix. There's no wand. It's just,
even if it's 95% accurate, do you mind if we deal with the other 5?
Yeah. And I always like to say too, it's like, you know, it's not the program that fixes you. You know, it's you actually working the program. And so being inspired is a part of that, and having something in front of you that you actually want to do is really crucial. And so at the end of the day, change is the goal. And whether it is through the steps or whether it is through medication, or whether it is through CBT, DBT, whatever the route that you're going, you know, change should be the solution. And so you need to be inspired by it. You know, like I never really felt comfortable, you know, meeting with a clinician every week. I just didn't, you know, I didn't feel comfortable with that. I felt a lot more comfortable when I sat in front of somebody that had been there, done that, and they had a genuine smile on their face, and that I could trust. You know, and that's something that I couldn't even argue with. I'm really good at arguing. But when I can sit in front of somebody and like they're well and they're smiling, and I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's not an opinion.
You know, so that's something that I needed. Now, and again, I'm sitting here and I'm telling everybody what my route was and what my opinion is. I would never write somebody off for what they're trying to do. Never, because it's a path. And guess what? Maybe one person will get it there. Even if I don't agree with the program, maybe one person will get it, and I'm going to be wrong. You know,
and that's fine.
Right. Yeah. I think the only time the government should really step in and be trying to control things is that if it was 100%, like, okay, this thing is fixing everybody.
Yes.
So let's do this. Yeah, this has to be the route, but it's not. It's not the case. You know. Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of variety. I mean, I know that you know, if I want a burger, there's not just one burger place. You know what I mean? Like if I want to go to a pharmacy, there's not just one pharmacy. Like if I want to go shopping, there's not just one. There's variety. And it's up to me to get to decide which one I want to go. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive, some are better quality, some are not. And, you know, I hear that multiple pathways to recovery, and I'm okay with that as long as everybody else is. Yeah. And that not every pathway needs to have every pathway available. Some people need that space. And, you know, I think I hear what you're saying, and I know that.
So I don't know how I changed that. I change.
Well, you just told them. They're going to change it after the show.
Okay.
Once they hear it. You said, listen, government.
Yeah.
Until you have
the way people
until
talk.
you have 100% solution that
sick.
solves all of
Yes.
it, then you have to be open to all the variety that
Right.
people have and stop trying to make everybody do everything. And
Yeah.
I think that was the message. And
Yeah.
I heard it, so
There's
I'm hoping
options.
they heard it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is, as I said, this is one of my favorite topics, and I really appreciate you finally coming on the show. I've been trying to get you forever.
That's a lie.
That is a lie. that was a flat out lie. But I do appreciate you joining us. And
Thank you.
I know our listeners, they get to hear Maureen and I talk all the time about it, but I want them to hear from the other half of the company, because you are the other half of this company. You drive that. I do my part, you do your part, but there are people getting well. There's a recovery community in Beverly because of what you do, because of the work that you put in, because of your investment in that house and the people that live there and their recovery. And I think it's just really important for people to know that exists. And this isn't just another, pop-up rooming house in a town. This is actually people getting well, paying taxes, working at jobs in the community, building a culture. And I think that's something that not everybody gets to hear about all the time. They hear sober living, they just think that other thing.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you coming on and helping our listeners open up their ears a little bit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen the magic.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Okay.
And until then, bye everybody.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank all of our listeners for joining us today on this episode of Collateral Damage. As always, if you'd like to find out all of the different ways that you can listen to and subscribe to our podcast, you can visit our website, which is www.cdpodcast.com. There are many different ways to listen, download, and subscribe, so we encourage you to choose the one that is most appropriate for you. And as always, we would encourage our listeners to get informed and stay connected. Thank you for joining us.